All About Writing with Ben and Sara.
Welcome to All About Writing, the podcast that covers everything about the world of writing from the inside out. This is episode 49, part 9, on our series on writing craft. I'm Sara, here with my co-host Ben, who is an award-winning, best-selling author and ghostwriter, editor, and publisher.
And I'm Ben, here with my co-host Sara, who is an award-winning, best-selling author, screenwriter, editor, and TED Talk presenter. And today, we are talking about the series Megaplot. So this is
why... stop talking. I'm going to open up my bottle of wine. It's my turn. Does anybody... We don't even get, have you seen one of these?
No. Wow.
Hold on. It's not working. There we go.
Nice.
And it, you just wait. We are not sponsored by Oster, but it does it all.
Brilliant.
I love how you always have a pretty glass, and I use a whiskey glass.
Yeah, it's all good.
Megaplot.
Okay. So series
Megaplot.
Megaplot. So this, if you don't know what that is, dear listeners, that might be like the series plot. Like if you're writing a bunch of books that go together in a series, and there's an overarching story that crosses multiple books. That's what we're talking about today, the Megaplot. And go ahead.
I was going to say in TV, it's called The Engine.
The engine.
The story engine.
Yep, story engine. The thing that moves us forward for the whole season, in the case of TV, or the whole series, in the case of books. And I think anyone who is envisioning writing a book series, you probably got a mega plot in mind. There's sort of this big, sweeping, epic saga that you want to tell. And in fact, often the problem can be, well, how do I break that down into bite-sized chunks to make novels? That is the first point I want to make about the series Megaplot, is if you've decided, okay, I've got this big long story that is going to take 5 books to tell, do not make those 5 books basically just 5 slices of one story going through. It's called the sausage novel, where it's like you've got this sausage that you've just sliced up into pieces, and each one of those is a novel. And that novel, which is a sausage slice, cannot stand on its own, right? Like you can't pick up book 3 and start because you have no idea what's going on because you haven't read book 1 and 2 yet. And this is the challenge of the Megaplot, is telling a story that takes place over multiple books, but each book still has its own self-consistent plot, its own story, and it has to be able to stand on its own. So, how do you do both?
And I was going to say stand on its own with a caveat that you can't pick up book 2 or 3 and understand what's going on.
Right. I mean, ideally, if you can pick up book 3 and still find your way, like, okay, there's a couple of things I don't know here, but I can understand what this story is telling me, that's great. You've done your job as an author, right? Whereas if someone picks up book 3 and has no clue about anything that's going on, then, maybe your mega plot is more important than your individual book plots.
I will say probably that's why, like Sarah J. Maas's books, like the Court of Thorn and Roses books, do well, because I've read them all. And I will say you could conceivably pick up book 3, having not read book 1 and 2, and probably been able to be fine through them. I think that's the biggest nod to her series that I can give her.
Yeah.
And I think there's pros and cons to the mega plot, right? Like part of the mega plot should be that it's all consuming, and by the time it's book 5, you really don't get book 5 until you have read book 1 through 4, because the nuances in book 5 are all coalescing into a final, epiphany. But yeah, I mean, you do want book 3 to be like, okay, here's a perfect example. When Harry Potter came out, my mother bought one book for each of us kids, me and my brothers. So one of us got book 1, one of us got book 2, one of us got book 3. I got book 2. I read book 2 before I read book 1.
Mhm.
And I was able to totally understand what was going on and who Harry was and where he had grown up and what his background was and all of this stuff without book 1.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so like I think it was like, and honestly, book 1, 2, and 3 of even the Harry Potter franchise can stand on their own. It's once you get to book 4,
Yeah.
forget it. You cannot read book 5 first.
That's fair. I'll give you that. Absolutely. If you're writing an epic series like that, where it's like 6 or 7 or 8 books, eventually you're going to get to the point where there's just so much context and so much backstory that people have to kind of have been read in to get there. But even if the first 2 books, can stand on their own, like book 1 is a perfect little thing on its own, with leaving open the idea for adventure. And then book 2 comes along, and if you've read book 1, well, great. But if you haven't, it doesn't matter. You just dive in, you get to know the characters, you get to know the context, and off you go. And if you're really good, I'd say book 3. You can you might be able to get away with book 3 if the scope of book 3 is still self-contained enough that you know the characters and you may know things, but the story itself is self-contained. Um, I think it's really important to do that. Now, often, we've talked about trilogies, and if you're writing a trilogy, which is a very common style, then book 3 is the end of your series, so you're good, right? So it might be hard for someone to pick up book 3 of a trilogy, but if you really pay attention as the author, you can still probably do it. And the key is to make sure that each individual book still has a complete plot. It has a complete arc. It has a complete character growth, sequence, so that the reader can be satisfied by that, right? And if they've read the other books, they'll be even more satisfied because there'll be little Easter eggs here and there and things that come together that they can love, but they can still appreciate the book on its own. I know as an editor, one of the things that would annoy me the most is I would read the manuscript from an author, and I would say, okay, there's this thing here, this whole scene that happens that makes no sense and has nothing to do with any of the rest of the book. What is that? And they say, oh, yeah, they'll nod knowingly. You don't learn about that until book 3. I'm like, okay, well, it's gone, right? Because there may never be a book 3. Let's be brutally
Oh,
honest here.
ouch, yeah.
Book 1 has to stand on its own, right? And if you're introducing things that are relevant to book 3, that's great, but they have to be relevant in book 1 as well. Maybe for a totally different reason. Totally different reason. But that's it. That's how you plant the seeds that come back later to blossom, and the reader goes, "Oh, that's so awesome." But they didn't realize it until they get there.
I will say that certain romance authors do this really well when they know they're writing, like, there are 7 brothers and they know they're all going to have different loves and they have different like tropes for each brother that they're going to do, right? And they plant scenes in like book 2, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
that that might be germane in book 4.
Yep.
And they're throwaway scenes. There are 4 sentences in book 1, but when you get to book 4, you'd be like, "Oh, I remember that." If you're, voraciously reading kind of thing. And to your point, they don't really take away from the plot of book 1, but they do add Easter eggs for book 4, and they do add depth and talking points that you can talk about for people who are reading the same series. So I do think like the mega plot can look different depending on the genre. And I say that because I'm thinking as we're talking of like Terry Pratchett with his Discworld series.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
it's world building, which we've talked about. And you
Yep.
can kind of just like build a world and then like let your characters have a really good time inside that world. But inside that world, you're also dealing with um sort of a mega plot. And I think being aware of the genre you're existing in and how to utilize your genre within your book. You know, so like in Terry's position, like he didn't need Easter eggs. He didn't even need things to read into book, 17 and book 25. Like, he was crazy. He just created a world, but and you could pick up, and I did this. I walked into his world mid-series, mid Discworld. I did not read book 1. I read book like 12. Like I had no idea. But I could pick up a book in the middle of his Discworld series,
Yep.
and the world he built was such a huge mega plot that it didn't matter what book I picked up. I could just have fun. Now, had I read earlier versions, I would have had a richer experience.
Exactly.
But I didn't need that to enjoy that book. And
Yep.
I think that's one version of the mega plot. So as we're talking about mega plots, I think it's important we say, like, on a whole, like, there's no cut and dry way of building a mega plot. I think it
No.
is it is genre specific, as
Mhm.
well as just like your overarching plan and what your story engine is going to be. I mean, what's the big plot point that drives that series? What's the one antagonist that can never get away, or what's that one theme that is there throughout, and that can also be a driving factor.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And I was thinking to myself, okay, what if I have like listeners who maybe they're 2 books in and they're thinking about their third book and they realize, oh, crap, I want to do this now, but I never thought of that in the first 2 books and they're published. What do I do with that? Like look what happens. Maybe you hadn't planned to make a plot. You were just writing because you love it. And then you now all of a sudden you're in a series and you're starting to think about bigger themes. Well, here's my advice is you can always go back to the earlier books and see what you put there as the author. There may have been a scene that you wrote just because it was cool, or there was, an idea that you followed a little bit just because it fit what you needed at the time, and it was consistent with the world that you were creating. Now you can go back and go, hey, wait a second, that happened in book 2. I didn't mean anything by it, but I can latch on to that and I can build on that now. Like I think the most famous example is The Lord of the Rings, right? The first book was The Hobbit, and Bilbo finding the ring from Gollum was just an interesting little thing in the middle. It was not the purpose of the story at all. But Tolkien went back and went, wait a second, a ring. Where did that come from? And lo and behold, we have Lord of the Rings.
Wait, hold on. I have to ask, as some, like, I did not realize that was the way
Yeah,
that played out
yeah. No, The Hobbit was written first. It was kind
as
of
a children's book,
a children's
quote
book, yeah.
unquote. Yeah.
And Bilbo just went on an adventure and had different little adventures, one after the other, one of which was
Was
meeting Gollum and
yeah.
getting the ring. Yep, it was the ring which made him invisible, right? And that was it. That was it. That's all Tolkien had in his head. But then he went
Yeah.
back later and went, I'll bet you that ring is something bigger and more important. And oh, here we go. And yeah, now, I mean, I'm not a Tolkien scholar, so maybe he had an idea, but I really don't think so.
Well, I
He,
just I sit here as someone, so people don't realize this, but Marquette University, my alma mater, owns most of Tolkien's stuff.
oh my,
I know.
cool.
I remember being in college and walking through the tiny little gallery in in our college, and they had taken down all the Marc Chagall's, because and the one very the one Salvador Dali they had, like, right, it's a poshy little tiny, and they had all these little pieces of Lord of the Rings because they hold it in their archives, all the Tolkien stuff.
Wow,
And um and they had the title page of Lord of the Rings, the first book.
the Fellowship of the
And
Ring.
and all of the titles that he had and crossed out.
Oh wow,
Yeah. Like, and then a couple years ago they had all of the phonetics, the languages that he did.
yeah,
to build the languages. And so I'm listening to you and I'm going, so wait, did he write The Hobbit? And then he went, oh, wait, no, it's Lord of the Rings. And then did he spend like a decade building languages? Like,
Well, this is an interesting point, and it actually ties back to Terry Pratchett, who did amazing world building, right, with
yeah,
Discworld.
yeah,
Well, Tolkien did the same with The Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth, and that, to our listeners, is a great way that you can build your mega plot. If you have such a clear idea of what your world is, the world that you're creating, and you go into all kinds of little details and you make charts and graphs and lists of all the different things, which will never be on the page, but you, as the author, know it, well, that is a rich mine of creativity that you can draw on as well as you build your mega plot because you know your world so well. Just like Pratchett did, just like Tolkien did, and go, yeah, I need something new. Oh, wait, yes, I did this. I made this a little while ago. Oh, yes, there it is. That's just what I need. And it's completely consistent with everything else that you've written because it's part of your world that you know so well. So, sheer world building can be a great way to build your mega plot if you didn't plan it out from the beginning and you were just kind of winging it. But there will be a verisimilitude. Did I say that right?
you did.
Verisimilitude?
I'm impressed. That
Yeah.
was a lot of syllables.
You'll have this consistency that will really play out on the page, and which your readers will love. So, you're absolutely right, Sarah. There are a couple of ways to do mega plots. One is to plan it out from the start and say, okay, over the course of 5 books, my characters are going to go from here to here. Or you just start writing, but you love your world so much and you put so much into your world that as you go, oh, there's more I can build on here. And there's stuff that I did back then that I can bring out now, which everyone will remember because it was relevant then in a different way. And now it's new. So super cool.
I think the thing we also want to like leave with our listeners too is like um mega plots can be small, like they are in a way in romance series. And they can be massive like Tolkien or Pratchett. And they are a little genre specific, but in the end, ideally, if you're working on a series that you have even just in your mind some sort of idea of a bigger picture than the single book you're working on. And if you can manufacture that in your head and kind of start building that on the page, you have a mega plot.
Hmm. Yep. And there's no requirement to have one beforehand. You
Correct.
know, like I could say my first trilogy that I wrote, the Virtues of War trilogy, I had a pretty clear idea of where I was going from the beginning. Like it actually started with book 2 and then added book 1 and then added book 3, but I had a pretty clear arc. Whereas the Blackwood and Virtue series, the Space Pirates, nope, I had a neat idea. And let's just see where this goes. And now here I am in book 4 going, okay, what have I got? Okay, let's work with this and see where it takes me. So it can go both ways, but either you plot out your story or you build your world, and both of them can really serve you well.
Perfect. All right. I love that we talked about mega plots. Like I said before we started this, like I've never actually heard the term mega plot, so I love that we talked about it. But yeah, there we
And
go.
considering you have a mega plot in the Flats Junction series, I mean, there
Yeah.
is overarching story.
Yeah.
Call it what you will. The engine of Flats
The
Junction.
engine. Yeah. The engine. Vaguely. Anyway. All right. There we go. All right. I guess that's our show for today, everybody. Megaplots, the word we made up for this episode. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our chats. And feel free to leave a review, which helps us a lot. And also, if you have any other ideas on what we want to talk about, that helps us a lot too. If anyone's looking for help getting their book ready for the world, we recommend our friends at Cascadia Author Services. Maybe they can help you with a mega plot. And you can find them at cascadiaauthorservices.com. And you can find Ben at bennettrcoles.com as well as Facebook and Instagram.
And you can catch up with Sarah at sarahdahlman.com and on Instagram. Thanks for joining us today. Please reach out if there are any topics that you'd like us to cover, and we'll see you again when we next chat all about writing.
This has been All About Writing with Ben and Sara.